Hey everyone, welcome to JS Cafe. And in today's video, we are going to solve a very interesting question that is asked in machine coding plus system design rounds. That is to create an infinite scroller. Okay, so without wasting any time, let's get started. So this infinite scholar question was actually asked to me in one of the Swiggy interview, and it was actually a machine, system design round. And usually in system design rounds, you don't expect the candidate to write code, but I was actually asked to implement it from scratch, right? That was weird, but again, I am here with that question solving you for you guys in this video. So let me put up the question. The question is like you have a input text, okay, and whenever you search something, you get some suggestions over here. And the thing is that whenever you reach the end of the page, let me show you the network tab. Let me close this once, okay. Yeah, so if you reach to the end of the page, you can see this loading text. You make a API call, okay, and you fetch more content, okay. Then again you see this loading, again you fetch some content and you come here, again you see the loading, you fetch some content and show, okay. This is how things work, okay. So this is a infinite scrolling, okay. So this is what I was asked to implement, and we have to create a generic infinite scroller component that can actually be served at various pages, so that you write this component once and you can reuse this everywhere, right? So yeah, that is the question. And let me show you what API I am actually hitting. Actually I'm hitting this open API, that is openlibrary.org search.json slash q equals to spy actually means the query that we are actually searching, and this is the page number, so we are at page number 8, right? So this is a paginated request, right? So yeah, this is what we are going to implement today. This is a working version, and let's go ahead and dive deep into the code. So I just created a create react app for you via npx. The project name is infinite scroll, and let's go into infinite scroll and do a npm start. Okay, so let's go to VS Code and clear things out. We let it load and close this, get rid of all of this. We don't need it. We don't need this logo. We don't need it. Fine. And this is a empty return. Let's delete it. Okay. So what I'm planning to do is first of all I'll create my generic component infinite scroll.js. So this would be our generic infinite scroll component, and let me first create a fragment for you, and in this fragment I'm basically having a input type equals to text, and on change, this is the thing. And let's import few things, use state from react, and let's call this const query comma set query equals to use state empty string. So we have a input text with an empty string, and on change I'll have to create one function, so I'll call it const handle input. Okay, and one more thing, it's better to use use callback with the functions, okay, because it's generally optimized this way. I hope you are aware what use callbacks are. So if you are not aware, so we generally, let's suppose we are passing any function to a component, right? And let's suppose whenever the parent component get re-renders, then the functions that are actually not using use callback are, created fresh in the memory. And that if by any chance you are passing that function to any component, then that particular component also gets re-rendered, right? So to avoid re-rendering, actually we are using this use callback. It's a good practice to wrap your functions inside a use callback, so that your code is actually really optimized. So yeah, you this might add a good impression in front of the interviewer as well. So in this we got the value e, and let me do a set query, and set query would be event dot target dot value, and on change I'm calling handle input, right? So this is the value, and also one more thing, the value should be equal to query. Okay, so this would give us basically a small input text where I can write a few things. Okay, perfect. Now coming back to infinite scroll, right? So this is our main component. So first of all, let me create one function for you, infinite scroll, and we don't need this react. Okay, so we have this in export default function, infinite scroll, which is having some props, right? Empty div, we don't actually need this. And let us first import infinite scroll, and let's decide actually what should be the purpose of this infinite scroll. Okay, the hell. Perfect. So I'll come to things. So first of all, we want to, we are actually rendering a list of items, so it is beneficial for us to provide how each item in that particular list is gonna look. So I'll name it as render list item, and this will actually give us the HTML. Okay, this would serve like rendering the item of the list. Next we need a prop that should actually get data. Okay, so this should actually help us in fetching the data from the API. So we have to now pass the list data. Okay, so list data, so this would actually be the array of data that we want to see, right? So this is the list data, and we also want to pass the query. Okay, right. So I think this is pretty much it what we need. Let's extract them in the props. Okay, const, yeah, get data, list data, and query. Yeah, so we have got these items, and fine. So now the main part is that we are able to get this data. Now let's make sure that we are actually trying to whenever this component loads, we actually may hit a API to fetch the query. Okay, so in order to do that, what we are doing is that we have to make a check on the query, and whenever this query is updated, so we can actually make an API call. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna import use effect from React, and I'm gonna add a effect onto it, and we are going to listen for query. Okay, so yeah, so this is the part, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do a get data, Okay, and I'm gonna pass query, and I'm gonna pass page number. Okay, so page number is something which we haven't initialized yet. So let's go ahead and initialize the value, and I think we should use ref, use ref over here. And what I'm gonna do is const page number equals to use ref, and our current page is 1. Fine. And yeah, and I'm gonna pass page number dot current. Okay, so this is the use effect. And yeah, so I'm expecting this get data to be actually be a promise, right? So one thing is that we if you see the running example, there is one loading text right over here, right? This loading, so we have to show a loader over here, right? So how can we actually achieve that? We can actually achieve that by setting boolean states for loading. So what I'll do is I'll say const and also I am gonna import use state for this role, and gonna set loading, set loading is equal to use state, and by default it is false. Okay, and what I'm gonna do now is we have a set loading, we have a loading. Now what I'm gonna do is whenever we trigger this use effect, I'm gonna say set loading to true, and when this promise actually resolves, finally I'm gonna do a set loading to false. Perfect. Okay, so now let us go ahead and write this get data for us. So get data, we can create a function over here saying const get data equals to use callback. Okay, and yeah, so what I'm gonna do is this is gonna take two things actually. One is the query and one is the page number. Okay, yeah, so once we have this, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make a fetch call. Okay, but before that, since it is a promise, so we have to return new promise, resolve and reject. Okay, now this promise, what it is gonna do is it is gonna make an API call. So fetch to API. Let me grab the URL. So this is the URL, plus I'm gonna attach URL params to new URL search params, right? New URL search params, and the parameter q would go for query, and page would be our page number. Okay, this is what it is, and I'm gonna wrap this inside a try catch statement. Okay, and let's take these things up, and I'm gonna make this async await call. So let's do a async, and I'm gonna await from promise. So const promise equals to await, and once this is done, yeah, so const data equals to await promise dot json. Okay, So we are, so actually this fetch returns the promise, and when you want to get the data you need to call .json that actually returns against the promise. So we have added another await over here, so we have got the data. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do console dot log data. Fine. So what is this error throwing? Let me check this once. Finally expected. Okay, sorry, we need to add a catch as well. Catch the error, and we'll do something about it later. Okay. So let's see if this is working actually. Okay, so we have okay, we need to pass few datas. For the time being, let's comment these out. Yeah, yeah, and let's go right click and okay, so infinite scroll was empty, so let's go ahead and fix that. We should ideally return something from here. So we have returned an empty JSX. Fine, let's go to network tab. Let's see if the call is actually happening. Oh, so missing allow headers. Okay, we will see to that. Okay, so I figured out the issue what was. So actually like we were passing the URL search params, but this question mark was actually missing, which was causing the API failure, right? So yeah, so after this there's one more thing we need to pass is the query actually. So we need to pass this query over here as well, because the query is what we are actually listening up to here and making an API call, right? So this is over here, and let's see if the things are working fine. Let's refresh things. Yeah, okay, so let's go to network tab. Let me type something as a spy. Fine, so see, three API calls were made, right? And we can see some data over here. Perfect. So we are having the data actually in the docs, right? We are having data actually in the docs, so it is wise to update the set. And one more thing, that we are seeing these calls thrice, right? Whenever I try SPY, usually it should be the way that the API call must happen once only, not thrice, right? To avoid and save network on that part, will add API cancellation technique for the fetch that is used by abort controller actually. So let's go ahead and implement it, right? So when we get some data, we have to set it as well. So first of all, what I'll do is I'll do a const data and set data, and this would be use state, and data is an empty array, and I'm doing a set data over here. Set data, whatever is the previous data, we get it, and I do a spread previous data, and a spread on data dot docs. Okay, so this is one thing. And yeah, and what we have to also do is we have to add abort controllers into the picture. So let me import useref, and so I'm gonna do const controller ref equals to useref, and that is initially null, and this controller ref we are making a check over here. Okay, so if controller ref dot current, then controller ref dot current dot abort. Okay, we abort it, and we define a new controller const controller equals to new abort abort controller, right? And yeah, and we are doing, or instead we can do is we can remove this controller. We can do controller f the current equals to abort controller, and after this part, right, after this whole part, yeah, after here, so we can add signal as um, controller f dot current dot signal. Okay, so let us just discuss what we did just now. So we created a controller ref, and we checked that if there is an existing controller reference to controller, then immediately abort it. Else create a new abort controller and pass the controller controller as a signal to the request. So what this is doing is that if you call this get data function again and again, and let's suppose you're making a network call, then what it will do is it will cancel out all the previous network calls, and it would create a fresh network call for this one. Okay, so this is where we are using this thing, abort controller. This is used with fetch, and also we have to resolve and reject the promises, right? So I am resolving this promise, and I'm rejecting this promise. Perfect. And yeah, this is it. Let's check if we are able to see this in the live. Go to network, and let's see how many calls are actually going. So one was aborted. We made one call, and I do spy. Perfect. So you can see that one request was actually cancelled. If I type spider, see, these many calls are actually rejected, and only one call was made in which we got the data, right? This is perfect, I guess. This is perfectly fine. And see, we are getting only one result over here. This is awesome. Now, yeah, so let's go ahead and implement. We should also render the list, right? So the idea of having this render list item is to provide HTML of our own type, right? Let's suppose we want to make this infinite scroll configurable, so that when any other developer tries to implement their design system into our component, then it is very easy to configure it for so they can easily pass their structure HTML, and they can easily get data from the API and render it according to a UI, right? So this is very configurable thing. So let's uncomment this, and let us define our own, that is const render item. Okay, I'll call this render item, and yeah, I'll call this use callback, and what we are actually returning is div, just a simple UI, right? And what is actually happening is, in this I'll get the title, okay, and I'll get the key, I'll get the ref. Okay, I'll come to you. I'll come back to you guys. What is this ref about? Okay, if we are not getting it at the moment, it's totally fine. But I'll when we as we progress, you'll understand it. So this key would be equals to key, and here I am actually printing title. Okay, so this is our render item. Okay, so what this is actually doing is, this is actually rendering a item of the list that we are gonna see. Okay, so I am going to pass this render item over here, and we can also pass the list data. So this data is our list data, so we will pass it over here. Okay, and coming back to our infinite scroll. Okay, so this is the page. Let's close this, and yeah, so this is our infinite scroll, and we have to consume a render list item, list data, and query. So what we are gonna write is we are going to create a function render list. Okay, not render list item, it should be render list. Okay, and I'm going to create this function const render list equals to use callback. Write it over here, callback. Okay, so what this is actually doing is we are actually iterating over the list data. Okay, so and this is gonna return an array of JSX. So we are going to do a return list data dot map item and index, and what we are going to do is return uh, render list item, and I'm gonna pass item data. The key is the index, and ref is something which we are not passing actually. Okay, which is perfectly fine, so we can pass null for now. And let's, if you see the results, okay, we refresh it and I do a spider, right? So you can see that we actually have a list of spiders over here, right? We got the array, and if you see the element, right, you can see all the div tags over here. That is actually the render list item. Okay, now let's come back to console. What I'm gonna do is so this was a render item, and we also need to implement a loading text, right? So what I am gonna do is I'll do if is loading, then say loading. Okay, no worries there. This is what it should look like, and if you come back to this, it is actually false. Perfect, right? So now what my plan is, when we are at the very last so we are going to use intersection observer. Okay, and by using intersection observer, when we come anytime to this very last element and that is actually visible on the viewport of the user, then actually make a API call. Okay, and this feature we are gonna achieve with the intersection observer. Okay, let me show you how it is done. So what we are going to do is we are going to create an observer. Okay, so let's create our observers. Okay, so this was our observer, and one thing to note is that we need to check that if the item that we are rendering is the last item or not. Okay, so what we can do is I can say if index equals to list data dot length, okay, -1, right? Then this is our last element, then return render list item. Okay, this time we have to pass the observer. Okay, let us create one more observer, const last element observer, and this would be a use callback. Okay, so what is happening is when we attach a ref via use callback, this actually helps us to access the node, and we, by that thing, we can actually get hooked to that particular ref and perform actions. Okay, so I passed actually the last element observer over here, and if you remember, we came to this part, right? We came to this render item in which we passed the ref, right? So we can do ref equals to ref. Okay, so ref was passed like this. This is the third property which we are actually passing in this, and this ref is actually last element index. If if the item is the last index. If the item is not the last index, the ref is null. Okay, now we got the node. Now we have to make some checks that if it is loading, then return do nothing. If we have observer, let me copy this observer. If observer dot current, okay, let me copy this. If observer dot current, then do observer dot connect dot disconnect. Disconnect. Okay, and what to do is observer dot current equals to new intersection observer, with entries. Okay, entries are actually other things which we are actually observing, and since we are observing only one thing, so it doesn't matter as much. And what we are going to do is if entries of dot is intersecting, okay, then so page number, right? So we have to do page number dot current plus equals to 1, and we need to actually do this thing again, fetch data. So what we can do is, okay, so we can move this into a function. Okay, let's call this as const fetch data equals to use callback. Okay, and let's write these things over here, and the dependencies are actually query. Okay, and set loading page number, okay, this only, and we change it to fetch data, and we call a fetch data over here. Okay, so this is one thing. And yeah, so we now what we can do is we can call this fetch data whenever we reach the last element. Okay, and yeah, so this is pretty much. And yeah, one thing more, we have to observe it, right? So if node observer dot current dot observe node, right? So this was the code, and I think this might just work fine for us. Let's have a look at it. Let's hard refresh and make a network check. Okay, now let me give spider. Okay, let's reach over here, loading, and yeah, again it is loaded. We reach loading, and yeah, again we came over here, loading, again a network call was made, and yeah, so see that if you see that the each headers, so this was page 1, this was page 2, this was page 3, page 4 and 5 and so on, and we got the responses, and this is actually working pretty awesome, right? Yeah, and there are a couple of things which we can do, it is up to you totally. Like, we have added all the logic of network in this part. Probably when you are giving an interview, you can move this logic to a network service, right? You can make a directory where you can create a generic function that can do all of these things, and you just consume that function from there, and you just pass the parameters and pass the URL and the parameters, and it will actually handle things automatically. Okay, no need to write things. But since this was just an educational video for you, so I have skipped kind of good to have stuff. So that's one thing from my end. And yeah, also coming to the loading part, currently we are only showing a loading text. The interviewer might ask you to allow to pass loading HTML as well. Let's suppose some user want to have that spinning thing, some user want to show image loading or any kind of loading. So that too you can pass it. You can pass it the same way we pass this render list item as HTML, right? So this render item function, so this was actually returning HTML only. Okay, so this way you can pass HTML to your components directly and make it configurable, right? By you can also add a fallback system, a design system to your components, and if any other design system is provided, you just override it by the existing one. Okay, so this is one thing that you can implement. And this infinite scrolling question, as mentioned, was asked in Swiggy, and it was also asked in one more company. I don't remember that actually, but this question is really important. And if you are not aware what this intersection observers are doing, and do give it a read on MD and do check how they work, right? Yeah, so this was all in this video. I hope you liked it, hope you learned something new. Try this example, right? Try to do this without taking help from anywhere. Try to do it from scratch and see how things are actually working. And I hope this this will help you in the upcoming front-end interviews in the system design as well. So yeah, this was all in this video. See you in the next one. Till then, take care. Goodbye.